First and foremost, let me say thank you. I'm so happy that I have the opportunity to be speaking with you, a person that I admire greatly, but a person I've also met and haven't gotten to know and really understand that a lot of what you do from the bottom of your heart and very sincerely, and have giving me the opportunity to, as I mentioned before, get very interesting, cutting edge ideas on education, inspirational ideas on education. Because as I'd mentioned, right now, I'm working with the Green Party in Lithuania, and I'm trying to inspire people to look at new models, sustainable models for the future. And one of the most important things we encounter is education. And if anybody knows anything about education, I think it's you. So thank you very much for being with me today.
I'm very excited to be here. I love this new method of traveling. It's so quick.
It's so simple. It's so simple. And something our viewers may not know today, because we're creating this content for a Lithuanian audience mostly, is that you have Lithuanian roots as well. You have family members which were born in Lithuania. Is that right?
Right. That's right. My grandfather and grandmother were born in Lithuania, and the entire family was born in Lithuania. And so the reason I say I'm Russian is because I think my grandfather might have done something that people didn't like. And I think he was exiled to Siberia. No one moved to Siberia just because they wanted to go there.
Yeah, that usually was not the case. That usually was not the case. But then, but if that was the case, that people exiles that were born in Siberia to be considered Russian, then a lot of people in Lithuania would also have serious issues with their identity. A very large portion of the population, by the way. So we started talking about Lithuanian identity and heritage. Let me share something very beautiful with you. So the Lithuanian language, the word for education, the word we use for education is švietimas, which literally means illumination.
Oh, that's great. What a great word. I wish other countries would do the same thing, because that's what education is supposed to be doing. It's illuminating the world so that you understand your surroundings. That's perfect.
It's a pretty word.
Yeah. I was going to say, if everybody thought of education that way, it would be a very different education world.
It's curious because you've been, I was reading your biography online, and you've done everything in the educational system. You've sat on boards, you've been in charge of curriculums, you've been in the classrooms, you've set up labs, and now you're in Stanford teaching teachers to become better educators. So you really know the ins and outs. And one of the most interesting things concerning especially your most recent book, how to raise successful people, you really also touch upon the fact that this process of education happens in the household and from a very young age. So I wanted to ask you how you fit all of this broad concept of education, or how you fit your philosophy into that whole broad concept of education.
So if you just think about a small child, at the age of 1 or 2, at 2 years old, parents are like, oh my God, they're driving me crazy, because they want to do everything on their own. And they run away and they try to put on their clothes, and their clothes are backward. And, this is an attempt by human nature to be independent and to explore the world. And Einstein said the highest form of research is play. And so what we want to do is allow kids to play when they're little. And because they're doing research, they're researching the world to see how it works. And back to your word about education in Lithuania, they're illuminating their world. They're trying to understand the way things work. So parents that foster, that help kids continue to play and explore and be independent, they are the ones that are helping set a foundation for adults who are going to be happy and who are going to be exploring the world and going to be self-confident. A lot of kids, their parents don't let them do this. The parents are very controlling. And they'd like, no, you should sit down here and do this. No, you shouldn't do that. And there's a lot of no's in the world. And that equals actually after they get to school, and there's even more no's. Don't do it this way, do it that way. You know, follow what I say. I know what I'm talking about. The child usually by the age of 10 or 12 becomes somewhat discouraged. And you see a lot of kids at that age saying, you know, oh, I'm not interested in school. Oh, I don't really care about, you know, what I'm doing. And the reason they don't care is because they've encountered the word no so much. And so I think parents can play a big role in saying it's okay to explore. It's okay to do things that are maybe a little bit unusual. My main rule is the only thing you can't do is things that hurt other people. If you are doing something and exploring and doing things on your own that don't hurt other people, you can keep doing it. But you know, you can't hit, you can't throw, you can't bite, but you know, you can do a lot of other things to explore the world. And today, a lot of that exploration takes place online. And I don't know what it's like in Lithuania, but I can tell you in the United States, parents are controlling what kids do online. There are apps that you can buy where you can watch your child 24/7 to see what they're doing online, so you can monitor everything they're doing. So my theory has always been, you know, human beings basically, they are good at heart. They try to help each other. They step on each other's toes out of ignorance. So you can help teach them, these are different ways that you should be interacting with the other world, with the other people. But, you know, it's really important to give them that opportunity to explore and to be who they want to be.
Right.
So today, if you want, well, it's probably not available yet in Lithuania, but there's a book that was just published, and it'll come out in 2 weeks, by Trump's niece, the daughter of his brother.
Mm-hmm.
And it tells the story of how Trump was treated as a child. And he was treated terribly. And that terrible childhood resulted in a person like Trump, who is always out to prove that he's the best, to
Right.
lie, to cheat, to do terrible things. But I think the important thing about that book is how your childhood impacts you as an adult. Because we are all products of our parenting, our parents' parenting. So I think that in order to help parents be better parents, I think that they can put some constraints in, but, you know, overall, give the child a sense that they know what they're doing, that they are in control, that life is exciting, and, you know, you can explore, and you can try new things. And if you make a mistake, well, it's not such a tragedy. You can just do it again. And hopefully you won't break anything. You know, like somebody's, you know, 100-year-old plate or something. You know, I would try to keep all those special things in places that are hard to reach for kids. Don't put, you know, precious things at the same level as of a small child, because of course they just make mistakes and break things. But
let me ask you a critical question, because we in Lithuania, especially during the Soviet occupation, and even when I was here during university, I noticed that a lot of the education was very much about repetition. It was very much
repetition,
about
memorization,
memorization. You know, exactly, ad verbatim, the way they said it, you need to repeat it. And it was almost like a process of indoctrination. Even a lot of the modern educational system is kind of built around the need of homogenization of large groups of the population to perform certain tasks. And what you're talking about is actually the development of character of human beings for some form of higher fulfillment, rather than, becoming, I wouldn't say citizens, because I think a citizen is a critical thinker, but kind of like a functional denizens within a socioeconomic paradigm. And so we're looking at very different educational models, right? One is for indoctrination, and the other one, what would the other one be in that case?
The other one is independence, creativity, critical thinking. So the indoctrination one was the number one education system starting at the beginning of the 20th century. And then the Russians really perfected it because they wanted a population that obeyed the rules. And if you didn't obey the rules, then you were thrown into jail. And the Russians might have left, but the education system is still there. Mm-hmm. And the education system didn't leave. I mean, it's all over Eastern Europe. It's pretty much all over the world, but it's very dominant in Russia. They're still doing the same thing in Russia today. And all the countries that were impacted by Russia still have an education system that focuses on standardization.
Right.
And standardization is memorizing and following the rules. In fact, it's the same thing's true in Germany. I mean, when a teacher comes into the class in a German school, the students all stand up.
Right.
And they're all very respectful. They never question the teacher and what they say. They never question, should they memorize all this? Everybody's just doing it. And, when they memorize, of course, the same mistakes that the previous generation made. Mm-hmm. So today, our world is so different. We need people that can think outside the box. They can think outside the mistakes of the previous generation. And again, quoting Einstein, he said, if you're going to solve the problems of today, you can't use the same thinking that you used to create those problems.
But that's a leap of faith.
Well, okay, we want to have some standardization. Okay, we want people to obey certain rules, right? But part of it needs to be creative. So my philosophy in the latest thing I've been pushing, mm-hmm. I have this nonprofit called Global Moonshots. Right. And the idea is to leave 80% of the education as is and change just 20%. 20% of the time in school, kids have an opportunity to create and explore and be themselves. And actually, interestingly, the school system likes that because everybody realizes that creativity, we need new thinking. And I said, this is just your moonshot time, your time when kids can think about how to solve some of the problems that were not solved at the previous generation. And you can do it, it can be agricultural, it can be technology, it can be other society issues, it can be whatever the kids come up with that they want to solve or that they want to work on, they can have that opportunity. And what we can do is provide a space. It's kind of like a WeWork space, only right. It's a WeWork in school space where you go and you work with your friends on things that you want to help society improve, whatever it is. Everybody, every group, every society has something that needs to be improved. We're not perfect.
But that's lovely. It's actually very practical because 20% is something that I think any educational system could negotiate with. It's not like saying we need to overhaul the whole thing. It's more like, let's just do this one thing which will actually show you where we could be moving.
That's right. And it works. So the schools are very excited about it. Palo Alto Unified, prior to this pandemic, was doing that. They were devoting 20% of the time to kids working on projects of their own. And that was the school district, ranked #1 in the state of California. So You know, I think it was making kids excited about being there. And it was giving the teachers 20% of the time for them to collaborate with their peers. So it was good for teachers, it was good for students, and it was good for the whole society.
Well, that's lovely. But there's something, for example, here in Lithuania, and I think in many other places, you have the socioeconomic divide, right? I mean, a kid is a kid
Right.
everywhere he is. And I really do believe that people are very much blank slates, which as you mentioned, you pick up your psychological conditioning from your environment, from your parents and things like that. But the quality of education is very different. And the way people look at those, kids from, say, a lower class than from a higher class. I mean, where you sometimes view that kids from the lower class, it feels like you want to keep them locked up and busy. Whereas parents, which can afford to, spend time with their kids, end up doing what you were mentioning, the helicopter parenting. And so I'm wondering, is there any way of unifying this? Because I'm not saying the people are different, but the socioeconomic realities are so different that I'm wondering whether that same medicine will work for both sides of the spectrum.
I think it does work for both sides of the spectrum. And what you said was very interesting, because the lower socioeconomic classes, the kids are locked up. Those were your words. It's more like a prison.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that if you're a lower socioeconomic kid, you need to have more of this drill, more of this memorization. And those kids, they're human beings. They don't like it either. And so my theory is give those kids the 20% time too. Some amazing things have happened and come from low economic families and low economic kids. So why just have this wonderful opportunity to be creative available to the upper group? So like you say, those parents, they have after school on Monday is music, and Tuesday is art, and Wednesday is tennis, or whatever. We need all kids to have those opportunities, all kids. And the school should allow for that to happen. There's no reason why it can't. It's just our mindset. We're thinking about it this way. Oh, they're coming from this area. They need more memorization, more standardization. No, they don't. They're human beings, and just because they don't have as much money doesn't mean that they're have a lower chance to be creative or lower opportunity to make a difference.
It's so interesting because in different cultures, education means something different, right? I think of Asian, in particular, say Japanese kids in 6-day school weeks, which are all about fulfilling the expectations of their parents. I think about Great Britain and kids going to those fancy schools where it's all about, entering a boys' club, right? And about learning a way of saying things where you'll be understood in a certain way so that you can be recognized to belong to a certain caste system. And when I hear you, I think of California culture, like really enjoying your time, taking it easy. And the times I've been to California, I feel that that's kind of the ethos of the place. But you have Silicon Valley and you have all that innovation there happening to prove that this bears fruit. Is that right?
That's right. Just think about the innovation that has come out of Silicon Valley. I mean, where would we be today without the internet and the web and Google? And of course, I think we can do a little bit without Facebook, but these social media is influencing the world to such an incredible extent. California is the 5th largest economy in the world. And we are really impacting the world in the way people think. I think more countries, more kids can have that same opportunity to make the world a better place if we just give it to them, give them this opportunity and stop telling them what they have to do all the time.
Right.
Like I said, we can still tell them what to do 80% of the time. Just that 20%, give them an opportunity to even know, to even think about the fact that they can make a difference. And right now they don't.
Yeah, it's so curious the way you bring it up, because I've actually read a couple of interesting articles which trace California and hippie and surfer culture to pagan sun worshiping people here in Europe, in mid Europe and Eastern Europe. And it's curious because in Lithuania we still have some people who are very much into the pagan ways, and they're very much about letting the child free and learning his way through nature, which is not very unsimilar to what you describe.
That's right. But see, what happens is, okay, the people that are in charge of the memorizing standardization, they're on one extreme, and the pagan group is on the other extreme. And my theory is, hey, could we all get together so we have memorization and some of the pagan stuff? So that's why I say the 20% time, it's a compromise. Yeah. You know, you're still doing a lot of the standardization, but then at the same time, you're giving people an opportunity to worship the sun or whatever they want to do.
and it's good. It's not even 50. It's not even a 50-50 split. It's, you know, just give me 20% and we'll make the magic.
That's right. It's just a little bit. It's not a lot. It's not a 50-50 split. Because, you know, being in the schools for so long, I can tell you that changing the school system, not going to happen. We just are not going to change the school system. We can modify it, but that's why I'm just into the 20%, because I'm very realistic. I know what it takes to change the school system. People tend to parent the way they were parented and teach the way they were taught. It's kind of instinctual. And so it's very hard to change. And I don't want to even consider it. And that's why there was a movement in the United States where they were closing schools, the whole school, and then they would reopen the school again. It was supposed to be a whole new school. And the crazy thing is the new school looked just like the old school. And it just cost all that money to do it.
But that's super smart, because what you're talking about is changing the paradigm from within.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, most likely the main stakeholder, the main agent of change will be the teachers, right?
Yes.
They're the people who make it. And you're actually now, you were right before we started the interview, you were mentioning that now you're at Stanford teaching teachers a lot of this. Most likely, I'm just curious. I want to know what you're teaching them, because I'm meeting a lot of people in education this week, and this is what we're going to be talking about. And if you could share some of that special knowledge with us, I know we'd be most grateful.
So it's in my book, How to Raise Successful People. I think that's been published in Lithuanian, by the way.
It has.
So I'm very excited about that. So there's an acronym. It took me a while to come up with this. This is like, what did I do with my daughters? What do I do with my students? And the acronym in English is TRIC, and it stands for trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. So what I do in the class is I slowly move from the total stage on the sage model, where I'm in charge of everything, to a model where the student is empowered. And so I'm teaching trust. I move so that I give the students more trust. I respect their ideas. I find it very interesting when I trust and respect their ideas, they're much more willing to share their ideas with me, and they're much more creative, and they're much happier. And then I give them a lot of independence. And then I encourage collaboration, one student with another, because students learn the best from each other.
Right.
And I treat them with kindness. So that's the model. And I can tell you that it works like a charm. I started with 19 students in a journalism program in 1984. And today I have the largest media program in the United States with over 700 students producing 10 different publications, all based on this model of empowering students and giving them trust and respect. I have 6 other teachers. Those teachers do the same thing. It's not like just me. It's a way of looking at the classroom, looking at the students. And even in this pandemic, those students, they ran their own Zoom classes. The teacher was invited, thank goodness.
Wow.
But the students ran the class, and they all decided they wanted to publish the newspapers and magazines anyway, even from home. So 70 kids in a class all collaborate. They publish from home. You would never know there was a pandemic. This happens when students are empowered. If I would be the one that was telling them what to do, I can tell you it never would have happened. It only because they want to do it that it happened.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful what you're saying, because a lot of people think that change comes from changing systems, right? They'll say, change the curriculum, invest into the school. You know, it's all about the material things around humanity, where you're actually talking about upgrading humanity itself, or the humanity in the space, to let the kids become the best version of themselves on their own and actually own the processes, if I'm understanding you correctly, right?
That's exactly right. You know, you cannot believe how smart kids are and how, I'm not kidding, so grateful they are when somebody trusts and respects them. I mean, I have students who graduated 20, 30 years ago that still keep in touch with me because I treated them with trust and respect, and nobody in the system did it. And it helped them believe in themselves. Some of them, or actually more than some, many of them have become very well known. They've become CEOs. James Franco is one of my students. He became an actor. You know, I don't care what you want to be in life, but you want to live out your dreams, not the dreams of your grandparents, not the dreams of your great-grandparents. And I think there are cultures in the world where the child is living out the dream of the parent or the grandparent. And sometimes that works out, but in many cases, it can create problems for that child. And, you know, I don't want to point at any of these cultures because I think they're worldwide in different areas, but, you know, maybe there's a modification. Maybe you can also fulfill your dream and the dream of the family at the same time. So I started a company. Well, actually, I didn't. It's a former student that started a company with me. So I should just tell you. And it's his idea. He's so smart. And he said that he went to school and majored in engineering, chemical engineering, to please his parents. And so, but then when he got to be an adult, he realized that he did not want to be a chemical engineer. And so now he's doing, you know, the things that he cares about. I think he's lucky because, you know, the last thing you want to do is be 70 years old or whatever, and on your deathbed and say, oh my God, I wish I would have done what I wanted to do, and not what my mother and father told me what to do.
Oh, that's such a tricky theme. I think at least one of the most interesting parts of my life journey has been to decode my parents and understand them as children who also were put into shoes and into roles that they had to walk and roles they had to fulfill.
Yes.
And strangely enough, it's like, I mean, if we have, say, alcoholism in the family, or we have a history of negligence or something, you realize that it comes down 3 or 4 generations, and you need a special kind of awareness. And again, I can imagine a lot of teachers, especially what you realize is I was amazed at the nursery and kindergarten teachers where we took our kids. These were state-run establishments. And they weren't teaching the latest Waldorf methodology or, you know, something super advanced, but they were super aware of what the kids were getting at home. They were very conscientious, you know, is he being fed properly? Is he getting enough love? You know, really just the real basics, which is something for some reason as a society we overlook. And so my last question for you, because thank you. I know your time is worth gold, and I'm so happy that you could spend a little bit more than a half an hour with us, and I'm really happy. But my last question is really, I'd like to send a message to the teachers, which are usually undervalued in our society, and particularly here in Lithuania. People who really, you know, I don't know, they put themselves, I'm not going to say at risk, but they really put their lives out there, and they really sacrifice themselves for the kids. And I know you relate to that. Like, what message would you send for teachers, or maybe you have a message for other people in society about teachers?
Well, so my message for teachers is that they really are the people who are making the biggest difference in society, and they need to really understand how important they are. Teachers control the future, because the way they treat the students and the skills they teach them makes the biggest difference for the country, for the future. And as a society, we as citizens need to appreciate the role of teachers. And I remember reading at the beginning of this pandemic a statement by a parent that said, "I now realize that teachers are not the problem." You know, they realize that it's so how much teachers do and how important they are to the world. And so society needs to understand, well, I don't even think we need to convince them anymore. We all know the role of teachers. And without teachers, we wouldn't be anywhere. So yes, thank you to all those teachers out there for dedicating their lives to making the world a better place.
That's lovely. And what do you think the role is for the teacher then now after COVID?
It's more of a, you have to remember you're still providing some standardized education, but you're more of a coach. Because if you can stand on the side like I did just this spring with the students publishing their own newspaper, you know, when you are empowering students, you aren't doing it for them and you're not telling them what to do. You are just coaching them. It's kind of like a team playing a sport. You're making sure that they are the best player that they can be without necessarily doing it for them. So that's what I would suggest.
Lovely. I love that message of trust. Trust, trust, trust.
Yes. Trust your teachers too. Trust and respect them. Give them independence, collaborate with them, and treat them with kindness.
Lovely. Esther, I'm again very chuffed, very happy to have been able to talk to you and chat about education and the future of education. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Lithuania when this thing eases up a little bit.
I can hardly wait to come back. I had the best time in Lithuania. You know, I went hot air ballooning. So I loved Vilnius. So
we know how to treat our guests. So we're looking forward to seeing you. And I'm going to turn off the transmission right now. Thank you again. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the future.